My name is Dr. Joan Kaufman. I'm one of the developers of the original paper and pencil KSADS-PL and co-developer of the computerized KSADS-COMP. Today, we're going to be talking about guidelines for doing the self-administered KSADS-COMP with youth and caregivers. First, starting with my disclosures, I've been a consultant on multiple industry-sponsored pharmaceutical pediatric clinical trials, but I won't be talking about any of that today. I am also co-owner of KSADS-COMP, LLC, therefore I'm a conflict of interest in trying to talk to you about the KSADS-COMP. I'm aware of that. I think they're great tools, and I recognize I have a bias. So the outline for today in terms of our training is I'm going to start with an introduction to the KSADS assessment tools, provide an overview of the youth and the caregiver self-administered KSADS comps, allow for time for independent exploration if you've not already been on our demo site, things that you should check out. Then we'll review some frequently asked questions that come up when people start to do the KSADS comp self-administered versions of the instrument. All right, so starting off with history. In 1978, a long time ago, Kim Pujantic was the one to create the first paper and pencil KSADS instrument, and he really was a revolutionary in his time. Back then, people thought the only way to learn about psychiatric problems in kids was through play and observation, and he was the first to say, no, you can ask kids about their symptoms, and you can learn what's going on by speaking to them. He was also a pioneer in introducing biological psychiatry research methods to child psychiatry. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1989, but his legacy continues. So in 1997, myself and a number of colleagues at Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic modified the paper and pencil KSADS for DSM-IV diagnostic criteria, and we also changed the format of the interview. The original KSADS, like most structured, semi-structured diagnostic interviews, start with a screen for a given diagnosis and then ask all the symptoms associated with that. And as a postdoc, I did many, many SCIDs, which is kind of an adult equivalent of the KSADS, where you start off screening for mood disorders, and someone would screen positive in the bipolar section because they had elated mood, and I would ask them about decreased need for sleep, hypersexuality, all those sorts of things. And at the very end of the interview, I would find out they were using crack cocaine. Technically, I should go back and re-ask all those questions about those bipolar-like symptoms, but usually by the end of the interview, everybody's pretty tired. So when we did the 1997 version of the KSADS-PL, we broke it down into a screen interview, which allows us to get a good diagnostic overview before probing in detail about any of the given diagnoses. So there's a screen interview, which has 2 to 4 items for each diagnosis assessed with the KSADS, and then criteria that determine whether the supplements are necessary. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that's been incorporated into the self-administered KSADS-COMP as well. All right, so the KSADS-PL has been used in multiple clinical trials for really every form of child psychopathology: schizophrenia, bipolar, major depression, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder. And many of these clinical trials have led to new FDA-approved indications of medications for kids. The paper and pencil KSADS has been used as a validation instrument in large-scale epidemiological studies, and also in numerous studies examining the longitudinal course, clinical, neurobiological, and genetic correlates of child psychiatric disorders. There are many limitations, however, to the paper and pencil KSADS. First and foremost, it is 215 pages long. It is a lot to Xerox. Administration time is usually a minimum of 3 hours to do the interview with both the parent and the child, and that's not usually feasible in routine clinical practice. There are also unique rating criteria for every symptom, requiring extensive training for its use and establishing inter-rater reliability. And there can be errors in selecting which supplements need to be completed, and we also know there's human error oftentimes in tallying symptoms. So we were fortunate enough to get funding from the NIH to create 3 web-based KSADS-COMP child psychiatric diagnostic tools. There is a clinician-administered version, which we're not going to be talking about today. And there's also a parent and a youth self-administered version, with the youth self-administered version having video clips, which really help to facilitate administration with youth as young as 11 years of age. Currently, the KSADS comps are available in English, Spanish, Dutch, Danish, and Korean. Japanese is on the way, and we hope there'll be additional foreign translations that we can add to the list. So We're going to be talking today about the parent and the youth self-administered KSADS-COMP. So some of the advantages of our web-based instruments is that the self-report versions can be completed completely independently, in person or remotely, and typically take less than an hour for completion. We have built-in suicide and homicide alerts, so if someone is away from your office and doing the self-administered KSADS-COMP, we have a way to alert you either by email or text that those particular items were endorsed. The KSADS-COMP have automated scoring and diagnostic algorithms. The instrument actually generates both categorical diagnoses as well as dimensional symptom ratings, and there are automated data capture features and then symptom level reports as well as diagnostic reports, and we'll talk a little bit more about those as we move on. All right, diagnoses assessed with KSADS. So essentially, you can see pretty much every single type of psychiatric disorder that you might want to assess in children and adolescents is included in the KSADS-COMP. Now, the self-administered KSADS-COMP has the same components as the paper and pencil KSADS-COMP. It starts with an introductory interview, which we'll talk more about in just a second, then has that diagnostic screen interview, which I talked about the importance of getting a good overview before going in detail about specific diagnoses. And that screening interview will determine if it's necessary to do any of the diagnostic supplements, and then the diagnostic supplements that are necessary to determine to finalize DSM-5 criteria as well as ICD-11 criteria. All right, so the introductory interview includes information about demographics, health history, prior psychiatric treatment, family history of psychiatric illness, adaptive functioning, the school, peers, other activities, and then also additional questions that are really important in terms of understanding risk, like whether there are guns in the home, issues about gender nonconformity, which we know are associated with increased risk of suicidality. Just want to highlight that the information about health, developmental history, psychiatric treatment, family history of psychiatric disorders, firearms in the homes, those are only obtained from the caregiver, not from the youth. All right, so that's the introductory interview. The screen interview, as we've talked about, surveys the primary symptoms of the different diagnoses assessed in the KSADS. On average, there are 2 to 4 symptoms surveyed in each different diagnostic area. Current symptoms are rated in this KSADS-COMP version of the instrument in a standard 0 to 4 point dimensional rating scale over the past 2 weeks, which really is something that's reasonable for a youth to do on their own or a parent to do on their own. And when it's done as a clinician-administered interview, there's not a ton of training, as we talked about, which facilitates the inter-rater reliability. But what I want to highlight is that while we have the same 0 to 4 point rating scale for every single symptoms, the threshold required for clinical significance varies depending on the symptom being assessed. So as an example, if we look at the irritability item in the depression section, in the past 2 weeks, how often has your child felt annoyed, irritable, cranky, with a cranky feeling lasting most of the day? In order for that to count towards the diagnosis of major depression, it has to be true more than half the days, nearly every day. Now, the symptom of role obligation or failure to meet role obligations from the alcohol or substance use disorder section, in the last 2 weeks, how often has your child gone to school, or have you gone to school or work when you've been drinking or when you were hungover? Now, the threshold for clinical significance is down to rarely, because if it only happened once or twice in the past 2 weeks, that's clinically significant, and that would indicate the need to follow up more specifically to see whether or not the diagnosis of alcohol use disorders was met. So again, the threshold for clinical significance in rating the different symptoms varies based on what symptom and what's really relevant. All right, so we did the introductory interview, the screen interview, the supplements. So there are skip-out criteria in the screen interview which specify which, if any, supplements will be administered. In general, the supplements are administered in the order that the symptoms for the different diagnoses appeared. So in most cases, youth would have had an onset of ADHD before major depression. So the ADHD supplement would be administered first, and we'll talk about why we want to do that and how we've incorporated some checks and balances in there. Okay, but when the time course of disorders overlap, or one disorder may influence the course of another, like substance use and mania, like we discussed before, then the substance use disorder would be administered first. And the good news is with the self-administered KSADS-COMP, the order for supplement administration is programmed automatically. So this was just built in. So what we've really tried to do in designing the self-administered KSADS-COMP is to emulate the probing that would be done by a clinician. So as another example, I didn't mention, but bullying experience is included in the introductory interview. And if a child endorsed bullying, and then when in the psychotic disorder screen, talking about paranoid thoughts, talking about people out to get them, the KSADS-COMP automatically will generate a question to determine if the child feels it's just those people who've been bullying him who's out to get him, or if it's really more pervasive. And if the child endorsed it's only the kids who's bullying him that he feels are out to get him, that's not going to count towards psychosis. So we have some of those natural clinician built-ins in the instrument. Another way in which the KSADS-COMP is designed to emulate the probing done by a trained clinician. We talked about the example before. If a child had long-standing ADHD symptoms and possible new onset depression that's been noticed in the screen interview, that the ADHD supplement would be asked before the depression supplement. And this way, if the child endorsed long-standing problems with concentration, when completing concentration disturbance item in the depression supplement, they would ask, have these problems gotten worse since you started to feel sad or down or cranky? Because if the concentration problems are not any worse than they were typically associated with the ADHD, it won't count towards the diagnosis of major depression. So again, tried to build into the self-administered KSADS-COMP the type of probing a good clinician would do. All right, so what we're going to do right now is I'm going to give a little demonstration and show you how, if you were using the self-administered KSADS-COMP, how you would set up a patient ID, and we'll walk through just a couple steps of what you would do. All right, so I'm going to log in. Thank you for waiting. And we'll go here. And so this first column on the left is the patient ID. And if I wanted to personalize it so I could link it with other research data, I would go here and then I'd say research 555, whatever the proper code is. And then I would save it. And then I can go back and I now have my research subject. So if I wanted to, now the youth was home and I wanted to send them the link or the parent, I could click here. And as you see, there's a URL address. I could just email that directly to the parent or the youth. Or if I wanted to, I could also cut and paste and text it to them. If we wanted to do the interview where they were in your office and you wanted to set them aside so they could work on it while you were doing other things before you met with them, you could just click right here. Oops. And then they would have a choice. The youth has the video clips, as we've talked about. They have a choice.
Hello, my name is Dr. Joan Kaufman.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kenneth Koback.
All right, so they would have a choice of having a male or female interviewer. And then as you'll see, oops, I didn't pick one. It doesn't allow you to move forward unless you do what you're supposed to do. And then as you see, if you wanted to, you can hide the videotapes. All right, so we'll look more at this later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out, log back on, and I just want to run over how you would potentially get the reports. All right, so if I'm here and I want to see what did they say, I can click here and I can get from either the youth or the parent, and I click only the questions asked. Oops, I'm sorry. I thought I clicked. There we go. All right, and then I can see exactly all the responses that the parent or the youth gave. And if I wanted, I could also generate a diagnostic report as well by clicking here. All right, so I'm going to pop out of here and get back to our PowerPoint and just walk us through some of the steps that we just did together. So if you want to put a patient identifier, we saw how you could do it. You click here. And what I didn't emphasize, I don't believe, as I was talking before, is the importance of not using any names, date of birth, or other protected health information. We keep the KSADS-COMP site completely only with de-identified data. And really, again, the rationale for that is KSADS is incredibly secure. We've been through all sorts of, hacking penetration tests, but even the Department of Defense has been hacked. So for ultimate protection, or also, if people can look at other people's things within a site, we do not want there to be any protected health information. So we ask you to remember that. What we saw before is if you wanted to send the link to someone completing it off-site, you log in, you can click right here, you get the URL, and if you want, you can email it to them, or you can cut and paste and put it into a text message if you like. If you predict cancel, that will just get you out of where you are right now. And then, as we saw, the youth version has video clips, which can be turned off if they want. And so they don't have to read the questions. They can just listen. The past 2 weeks, how often did you feel troubled? Have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep when you wanted to sleep? So they don't have to do the reading. They can just listen and watch along. And this is what the instrument looks like if it was on an iPhone. And again, the parent version only has the text. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to do and readily readable and the like. All right, and we also saw if you wanted to then look to see the reports, you could go here, and it's the far right column when you were on before, which would say reports, and then you'd have the option of the symptom response, which then can give you the response to every single item. And we also saw that the diagnostic reports could be available as well. And this is an example of what the diagnostic reports look like. It will say what diagnoses were met and which symptoms were present. And we also have data capture features that are readily downloadable. So if you have not already had an opportunity to spend some time going through the KSADS-COMP self-administered versions, I recommend that you log onto the demo site now. You try modifying a patient ID, and remember not to include any PHI when you label it. You can copy the URL address, send it to either a mock caregiver or youth. You can click do the interview now and actually go through it yourself so you know what it will be like when parents and youth actually administer the KSADS-COMP. I'm recommending that you also try the back button, try writing some comments, which I don't think I highlighted that, but every single page gives you an opportunity to write comments as you're going through the KSADS-COMP. And then you can review the symptom and comments and the diagnostic reports. And when you're finished, you can come back and join us. All right, so before we finish up today, I'm just going to go over some frequently asked questions related to the KSADS-COMP. If the KSADS-COMP is HIPAA compliant and GDRP compliant, which is the European standard for protecting data, why can't we use protected health information in the KSADS-COMP? The bottom line is, as I said, even the Department of Defense has been hacked. We want ultimate security. And also within a given site, you can usually see the data that was collected by your colleagues. And so for ultimate security, we ask absolutely no PHI be included in the KSADS-COMP. How young a child would you ask to complete the self-administered KSADS-COMP? We've designed it for youth 11 and above, but the self-administered KSADS-COMP has been used in the Adolescent Brain and Cognitive Development Study, ABCD study, with children as young as 9 years of age. So some assistance may be needed in those cases, but we say 11, it may be possible to use it with children as young as 9, or it seems to be possible to use it with children as young as 9 years of age. Can research assistants help youth complete the KSADS-COMP? Absolutely. And that is what they ended up doing in the ABCD study. So that oftentimes it was done independently on site. And if youth had questions, they were there to sort of facilitate reading something or interpreting something. What if parents or youth are uncertain about dates for the onset of symptoms? Just ask them to do their best guess. We're not going to worry too much about it. Is there a save and return option if the parent or youth cannot complete the KSADS in one sitting? The good news is as the parent and youth go along, all data is stored automatically. There is no need to press the save and return button. If they stop, they get interrupted for any reason. If their Wi-Fi, falls, breaks up, what have you. When they next log on, it will pick up exactly where they left off. So no data gets lost, no need to concretely save everything. It's all done automatically. Are diagnoses generated with a self-administered KSADS-COMP equivalent to diagnoses derived using the clinician-administered KSADS-COMP? There has been decades of data that lets us know parents, youth, and clinicians do not rate symptoms the same way. And so we look at the self-administered KSADS-COMP as a tool to facilitate clinicians making decisions. It's not to replace decisions. When we did our paper that was published in 2020, we showed proof of concept that we could combine the data from parent and youth and get really close to what clinicians come up with for diagnoses. But we have not further developed or validated that at this point. So we recommend always, if you're using this for clinical purposes, to make sure you get information from both informants and look at the data from both informants and use it to guide your decisions in terms of diagnoses, triage, treatment planning, but it's not designed to replace the clinician. It's designed to help the clinician, and ultimately the clinician should always review this information before finalizing any decisions on diagnosis, triage, or treatment planning. All right, if you have any further questions, you should feel free that you can reach me at my email, joan.kaufman@ksadscomp.com. We appreciate you coming and being a part of this. And I'm just trying to see if I can turn off the video, but it's not quite letting me, so I apologize. All right, thank you for joining us, and feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. And we're happy to hear that you're thinking about using the self-administered KSADS-COMP.